Hi everyone, it's APO Sports, and we're going to be breaking down this game that just ended between the Indiana Fever and the Minnesota Lynx. Yeah, it sucks to talk about the losses for sure. This was, I don't know, I feel like it was a very winnable game, and it got away from the team, and it really got away in the third quarter. We're going to be talking a little bit more about that. There were some things that Christie sides, I believe that Christie sides did that could have prevented a lot of the issues that happened in the game. What really appears now to me is that there is no game plan, game to game. Like, where's the game plan? It's just going with the flow every single game, and I guess she can afford to do that because she has Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell. She has a really good team who it seems like between them, they're figuring it out and playing together on the court. But I don't think the coaching staff has a plan or be like, oh, okay, this is happening. This is how we're gonna stop the bleeding. If this happens, there's no plan at all. They don't know what rotations work, what rotations don't work, and in what situations. They're just trying to figure it out as they go. And this is evident by, of course, I'm going to get into the box score and everything like that, but this is evident by the Maris Dantas play. And of course, I just did a video kind of breaking down her game and doing a player spotlight on the Maris Dantas. But she plays 7 minutes in the first quarter. I believe it was in the first quarter or in the second quarter, but it was in the first half. Plays 7 minutes. She plays well. Really, I mean, she didn't. It wasn't the best 7 minutes that she's had, but they weren't the worst. She committed a foul. She missed a three. An open three, and then Chris decides takes her out and never brings her back again. So that already tells you that in her mind, she's like, "Oh well, Damaris doesn't have it today. Let me not bring her in anymore." And that is just, what are you? So she's trying to figure out whether a player has it or not within a few minutes, and then making decisions that are going to impact the rest of the game instead of sticking to a game plan that they know works with lineups that they already know works. I just think that they seem to be lost out there. The coaching staff, Christie sides, there were so many moments that the bleeding had to be stopped, and they didn't know how to do that, although they have the personnel to be able to do that. There was another moment that I want to talk about. There was a timeout in the fourth quarter, I think with about 4 minutes left. And so yeah, there was a timeout, fourth quarter, with about 4 minutes left. Lexi Hole is on the bench, and she's on the bench because of foul trouble, which we'll get into why she's in foul trouble to begin with. But bench for foul trouble. I thought so. The Fever were down one with possession of the basketball, or down three with possession of the basketball, and I'm like, all right. I even tweeted, if this was a timeout designed to bring Lexi Hall back in the game, then that's genius. No, of course not. I don't know what they did on that timeout, to be honest, because the play ended with a Kelsey Mitchell isolation from three, like no ball movement, no anything. Like, it's just dribbling, Kelsey Mitchell dribbling, and shooting. That's not her game. Maybe she believes that it's her game. That's not really her game, and not in those type of situations where you need a high efficiency play. That was kind of frustrating. Talk about Kelsey Mitchell again. I think it was too much. It wasn't working today, but it was too much of the ISO, dribble, and shoot. And she didn't have it. She just didn't have it. It wasn't really her game. I mean, she was 4 of 8 from the three, and we'll get into the box score to cover all of that. But it wasn't really good. And then this defense, I don't know why Lexi Hall is the primary defender on Napheesa Collier. Like, I just don't know how you can afford to do that. And not that she can't. She struggled, and Collier seemed to have a field day with Lexi Hall. And surprisingly enough, so Lexi Hall is listed as 6'1", and Collier is also listed as 6'1", but there's no way, right? There's just absolutely no way Napheesa Collier is 6'1". I mean, she's the one who opens, so the opening game jump ball, she's the one who does that, and they have like two other super big players in Minnesota. Let's see. What do they say here? Yeah, they're saying 6'1". No way, man. Hell no. Alana Smith is how tall? 6'4". They look the same height. Somebody's lying in this shit. Because that can be true. That can be true. But anyways, 6'1" Collier, 6'1" Hole. Maybe that's what Chris decided to say. Oh, she's 6'1", you can guard her. Lacey Hole, she can guard a lot of people, and she can hold her own against Collier, but she should not be the primary defender. The problem with Collier is that, she presents all kinds of problems, though. She's taller than 6'1". No one can convince me that she is not taller than 6'1". But she's a great post player, so you need a big body on her. Otherwise, she's just gonna go by you. She's big too. And here's the thing: there's no way she looks lean. Check this out. She looks lean. It says 6'1", 173 pounds. Where? How? Lexi Hall is 6'1", 155 pounds. Does Collier look 20 pounds bigger than Lexi Hall? No, she does not. But that's significant. 20 pounds over you down low. You can't contain with that shit. So I would say put Boston or Smith. Smith is just a poor defender. She's gonna lose Collier all the time. And then the Lynx have really smart players in Courtney Williams. I mean, that team is full of smart players who play within the constraints of what they know that they do best. Right? Like Alana Smith, she'll go. Here's how great Alana Smith is just in the games. And again, I've only seen this Minnesota Lynx team whenever they play the Fever. I haven't seen them in any other games. But Alana Smith is such a good player, like a high value player. Look, I'm just looking at the numbers. She was plus 17, but she's such high value player that she's happy not scoring. You know what I mean? Like she can be any game and she will not take it. I've seen games where she doesn't take a shot, zero, nothing, and she's happy because she's affecting the game in all these other different ways. So Alana Smith is a really good player for the Lynx. Bridget Carlton is a damn sharpshooter, man. But also, have you seen her take a bad shot? She does not take bad shots. She just waits and waits, and she knows that sooner or later she's gonna be open for three. Courtney Williams. I was super impressed by Courtney Williams. Again, she was plus 20 here, but great decision making after great decision making. Such a disruptor on offense. Like, I was like, please, somebody get Courtney Williams the hell out of this game. Such a disruptor, because they have a lot of offensive actions going on at the same time, and the Fever are not equipped to guard them all, especially when you have Hole on Collier. You have Hole on Collier. Now, the rest of the Lynx are ready to are free to roam and disrupt offense and find the open player. It's insane. But back to Collier. Collier is so tall that you need a bigger body to guard her, but she's also lean and athletic, where she's going to blow by you if you're not quick enough, which is why I don't think Boston can guard her. Melissa Smith maybe has the athleticism and the size to guard her, but she's too many mental lapses. Collier will figure out a way to outsmart her. Who else do we have that could potentially Dantas? I love Dantas, but she's big, she's got the body, but she's a little bit slower. Temi Fagbangley maybe is the best player that can guard Napheesa Collier, because I just don't think anybody else really can. In fact, Bentley is big enough, tall enough, athletic, maybe athletic enough. You see her running down the court. She's probably the only one that could guard Collier in this team. Otherwise, you should not have Lexi Hall on Collier. And this was also a coaching display. Like, I think Cheryl Reeve was like, "Oh, you won Coach of the Month. That's cute. Let me destroy you real quick." And it was just really the big difference here was coaching. How, you know, how Cheryl Reeve operates. You know that she has a game plan. And again, she's been with this team, so she knows these players. She's known them, and she has a sharper, in my mind, she has a sharper basketball mind than Christy Sides. I think Christy Sides is good. She's trying. I just don't still see that basketball mind, because there's some things that she should know by now that she hasn't figured out. Like, by now you should figure, like, if I'm figuring some of this shit out and I'm over here in Japan on my couch and I've never really been involved in professional basketball, then that tells you something. That I'm trying to figure out things with Dantas and all these other players. And she's not seeing that. It tells you she doesn't have a basketball mind at this point. Like, the rotations in that fourth quarter were atrocious. And she was put in a tough spot with Lexi Hall being in foul trouble, because Lexi Hall kind of masks a lot of the potential bad decisions that Christy Sides could make. Like, if she has Lexi Hall and Alyssa Smith on the game in the game at the same time, it could mask, you know, that bad decision of having Alyssa Smith on the court in the fourth quarter. Um, Instead of having Dantas, Hall, and the lineup that I've been talking about forever now. But anyways, looking at the box score, Caitlin Clark, 25 points. It was a good game. 25 points, 8 assists, 8 rebounds, 7 turnovers again. Back-to-back games with 7 turnovers. Her shooting is still really good, although her her shooting from the field was, she wasn't that effective. 8 of 21, and I think this is the first time that Caitlin Clark has a game that she shoots over 20 shots in a game. That's a first for her, but excellent shooting from 3, 5 of 10 from 3, and even Kelsey Mitchell, 4 of 8 from 3. It was really good. And then Kelsey Mitchell, 23 points, 2 assists, 2 rebounds. But the 23 points are a bit deceiving because it wasn't an effective 23 points. And again, she stalls the offense too much whenever she's in ISO. I think she can do that if, like, you clearly don't have a play and the shot clock is winding down. Then I would say, yep, give the ball to Kelsey Mitchell, and I think that that's a good play, right? Because you're like, hey, there's 6 seconds left on the shot clock. You're not getting anything. Find Kelsey Mitchell so she can create something. I think that's okay. But if there's like 8 seconds or more left on the shot clock, she should not be doing what she's doing as far as that ISO game that she does a little bit too much. Sometimes she's hitting it, and then you can allow her a little bit more of the freedom to do that. But when she doesn't have it, she doesn't have it. Aaliyah Boston, 20 points, 2 assists, 5 rebounds. She always affects the game in a positive way. So I'm never going to have anything negative to say about Boston, except whenever we talk about third quarter madness in the next segment. And Melissa Smith. So here's the thing that I'm gonna say, and this is gonna sound crazy because I'm super critical of Melissa Smith all the time, but she had 2 points, 1 steal, 2 assists, 7 rebounds. I actually think this was one of the best games from Melissa Smith and from the standpoint of being under control. Not trying to do too much, playing more within the constraints of the team, or within the rhythm and the flow of the game. So really, although you see the box score, you see 2 points, but I actually think this is one of the best games that I've seen from Melissa Smith in a while. Yeah, she was 1 of 7 shooting and everything like that, and some of these she could have gotten down low, but there was tough shots. She takes tough shots and she makes tough shots, but she wasn't making them today. 3 point. I guess she had a 3-pointer last year, and when we look at the numbers, but I haven't seen that this year. I've pretty much watched every Fever game. I haven't seen her shooting from distance at a decent rate. So, but I thought this was one of her better games, and if she continues to play like she did today, I think she can definitely earn more time in closing time. But I don't really think she's quite capable of that, which is why I believe that still need to have Damaris Dantas in the game in the fourth quarter. And then Lexi Hall. I mean, Lexi Hall is. I don't know where this team would be without Lexi Hall, in all honesty. I mean, I'm always going to sing her praises. To me, she's the most important player in this team. You see her getting offensive rebounds here and there. You see her getting steals here and there. You see her blocking shots. I mean, she is everywhere, right? The 50-50 balls, she's there. I mean, she's just smart basketball player who you need on the court all the time. She only played 30 minutes. She needs to play a lot more. She's in foul trouble. But again, because she's being set up for failure, she should not be guarding Napheesa Collier. Period. Dot. Gotta move on from that. And then, so that's where it is. As far as the game, that's where the game went. I think the Fever are a better team than the Lynx. Like if you look at personnel by personnel, the Fever just have a lot more high powered offense, more high profile players. Like if you look one for one, I think one for one, it could be a toss up whether Collier is better than Caitlin Clark or Caitlin Clark better than Napheesa Collier. Each player brings something different to the table. But after that, when you go player by player, so their best player, I think they cancel out, right? Caitlin Clark and Napheesa Collier cancel each other out. Kelsey Mitchell is better than Kayla McBride. I mean, that's not even a discussion. Aaliyah Boston is better than Atlanta Smith or whoever else they have that they bring off the bench, or Bridget Carlton, whoever you want to say that is Minnesota's third best player. And I actually think, between Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell, it's hard to say who's two, who's three. But Aaliyah Boston, so say if you're comparing Mitchell to McBride, Boston's better or Mitchell's better than McBride. Boston's better than Carlton. I think Courtney Williams is not. She's not one of those players. She's one of those like Mark Jackson type players, like back in the day, like New York Knicks when he played with the Pacers, the Knicks, and everything. He just makes good decisions. But I would much rather have Lexi Hall than Courtney Williams. Like that's just me though. So that I mean, people can figure that out on their own, and then it's a matter of Nalissa Smith and who else am I missing? I mean, that's it, right? Smith, Alana Smith. Carlton, Collier. Anyway, just look through the roster and you're gonna see that the Fever have the better players, the best personnel, and they have the better team. It's just a matter of keeping their composure, making sure that your coach is not working against you. The officials were really bad today too, I feel like, and you can tell, a lot of people have mentioned the disparity in free throws, like 25-13 or something like that. That's crazy. So you can tell, and watching the game, you can tell that the whistle was blowing against the Fever most of the time. So they always find a way to mess it up. But this is going to be, if this is the matchup in the playoffs, it's going to be an interesting matchup. So let's talk about the third quarter. So third quarter madness is kind of what I've labeled it here, and we're just going to talk about it real quick. So you can tell that, well, first, it messes with your like. This is why closing out first halves or the second quarter is so important, and why you need to have to close out the second quarter. You need to have the same personnel to close out the second quarter that are gonna close out the fourth quarter, because those minutes and how you close out the second quarter is just as important as how you close out the fourth quarter. So you need to figure out what that lineup looks like so you can close them. What happened in this game? You don't have that. You stick to the starting lineup, but everything fluctuates. Everything's super. Every game is different as to what their lineups and rotations look like. So Minnesota just goes on a. I think they were leading by 10. They closed the quarter on a 5-0 run. So now it's 50-45 instead of being maybe ahead more than 10 points, because they had the opportunity to do that, but they weren't. Then to start the third quarter, third quarter is just a complete disaster, right? We're losing our minds. Aaliyah Boston is getting hit with a technical foul. Caitlin Clark is arguing with the refs, left and right because of a lack of foul calls, and some of them were legitimate, but again, and although they were bad and they should have been called fouls, but you can never just assume that you're gonna be called for a foul, because officials sometimes call it, sometimes they don't. That's what I hate about officiating in basketball and in football. It's just too arbitrary as far as really every play, like every possession and every play in basketball, you can either call a foul or not call a foul. You can, because there's so much contact all the time. You can always justify anything being a foul. It's just a matter of whether the officials feel like calling it that time or they don't feel like calling it that time. It's the same thing with NFL, right? Like false starts and all this shit. That's happened, or offensive interference. Those things happen so often. Sometimes they call it, sometimes they don't. That's just how it goes. Um, the only sport where it's kind of fair is in baseball, right? Because even though in baseball you might think that an umpire has a terrible strike zone, but the good thing about that is it's not a terrible strike zone just against one team, right? It's just both teams get the same terrible strike zone, which isn't a, even though it's bad, but it's fair. In basketball, it's not, right? So they get to decide when fouls are being called and when they're not, and that's a huge problem in basketball. But you can't lose your mind because you didn't get a foul call, because again, the refs control that. So whenever you get emotional and then you don't run back on defense, then Minnesota is such a composed team. Maybe they can get away with this on any other team in the WNBA, but against the Lynx, you can't. Look at that roster, up and down. That roster is probably the most mentally composed team ever. Like, they don't get rattled. I don't see them getting rattled. Maybe Collier, but Collier is super level headed as well. She's extremely smart, by the way. But this team is the wrong team to lose your composure on, because they're not gonna do it. The crowd was going nuts. Minnesota didn't care. They were still knocking down threes. Um, that's the advantage. So Minnesota over what's Minnesota's advantage over the Fever? It's coaching and it's composure. Like, they are not gonna make tons of mental mistakes. So it's but it's a sign it's a really well coached team. So props to Cheryl Reeve with that, although I'm not a huge fan of hers in general, based on the whole thing happening with Caitlin Clark being left out of the Olympics and everything like that. But yeah, third quarter. I mean, the third quarter. Let's see if we can look at it here. In the third quarter, that was the game, right? So the Fever win the first quarter 27-19. They lose the second quarter 26-23. That's okay. But then they lose the third quarter 29-12. So not only did you give up 29 points, but you only scored 12. What a disaster of a quarter that was in every way possible, right? In coaching, in Kelsey Mitchell's isolation, in lack of composure, uh, just everything collided. The officials, with their, lack of calls or lack of efficient calls or effective calls, everything that could have went wrong with the Fever went wrong with the Fever in that third quarter. I mean, 29-12. It's hard to overcome that. They came back in the fourth quarter kind of swinging, but it was too late. And then would we categorize this as Indiana Fever good loss? And it's hard to say that any loss is a good loss, but I think this one is, because it provides a learning opportunity. You could already hear Caitlin Clark in the post game. She was already taking some blame for some of the plays that she made, like the turnover. Whenever she had an amazing block, I can't remember on which player it was. Like, blocked them out of the air. Like, as soon as the shot went up, she came out of nowhere, blocked the shot, and she was going in transition, made a bad read, trying to pass the ball to Temi, and it was not that it wasn't a good pass. She had the right idea, but the Lynx read her mind sooner and quicker, right? They were able to react to what Kaylin Carr was going to do. They understand she wants to pass, so they're going to leave her. Like, all right, if you want to score, go ahead and score. We know you're looking to pass, so what are you going to do? There were a couple times where the Lynx just read Kaylin Clark. It seems like they're really good at reading what she wants to do, um, which is why I think she needs to be more aggressive. But they are really good at reading and anticipating what Clark does. There was one in which Kaylin Clark went up to she was faking a shot, and then one of the players, it seemed like they were gonna do the whole. She was trying to create contact so that she could try to get an N1, but the Lynx player was able to fake Kaylin Clark, and like did not make contact with her, even as Caitlin Clark was trying to lean into her body. The player was like, "Nope, not today." Uh, and I think she was complaining about that, but there was no contact though. They play really smart, but it's a good loss because you can. I think this is an opportunity for you to tell, yeah, we're better than this team talent wise. Our roster is better, but we need to do a better job at learning what works and what doesn't. I don't know if I've completely lost faith in Christy's size to figure this out, but hopefully she looks at this game as a learning opportunity. Again, you learn a lot more from your losses than you do your wins, because they sting a lot more, they hurt a lot more. You don't want to go through the, like thinking about what went wrong here too much. So I'm sure they're gonna try to figure out what happened and try not to repeat it as they move forward. So that's it as far as whether it was a good loss. And moving on to Fever, potential matchup is Fever versus Sun. So right now, if we look at the standings, Minnesota with this win moved up in the standings, which is why I thought this game was so important for the Fever to win, to maintain Minnesota in the third seed. Although, I mean, maybe you want to sidestep them. The only thing that worries me about the Connecticut Sun is the Nalissa Smith, Dejonae Carrington relationship. This is one thing, and I don't know, maybe someone can tell me in the comments whether this is something that has happened before, where like uh someone going against a significant other in professional sports, but not just because this has happened, not just professional sports or any random game, because we can tell that, of course, Carrington and Smith have been able to do it no problem up to this point, but Smith has never been in the playoffs. It has never actually faced her in playoff high pressure situations. So I just don't know how this is going to affect the teams, like both teams. How is it going to affect Nalissa Smith? How is it going to affect Dejonae Carrington? From what I can tell, Carrington kind of has the lead in that relationship. You can tell. I think post game there was a game that the prior game between the Sun and the Fever, where the Fever won. There was some post game action where it seemed like Smith wanted to take a picture with Dejonae Carrington, and Carrington was like, kind of ordering like, "Hey, hurry up, make sure." And then Melissa Smith trying to find a photographer and being all nice and like trying to hurry up. And Carrington seemed to be like on her about, all right, let's, you know what I mean? Like you could tell just from that interaction that Carrington is the boss in that relationship. So that worries me a little bit if the Fever were to play the Sun in the playoffs. But that's just me and just thinking here, because to me, one of the things in sports that I highlight the most is how psychology and your mental state affects certain plays, right? Or certain games, momentum, all these things, right? That's why home teams tend to do better than road teams, is because of the mental of the crowd. You feel like you have all these fans in this crowd that is supporting you, almost carrying you through. So that's something for your mental psyche. Um, just an advantage, because really, other than that, what advantage does the crowd really provide, or the home being a home court? What does it provide? It's the game. It's the same game, but it's just a mental aspect of it. And it could be one of them as well. And I already think Nalissa Smith commits too many mental lapses in regular games. Imagine in a playoff game playing against your significant other. To me, that's just another recipe for disaster. So we'll see. It does appear to me at this point that the Fever should end up with the 6th seed, but who knows? Phoenix could still overcome them. They do own the tiebreaker, but I don't know. But it's looking like the 6th seed. The 3rd seed is still up in the air, so it could really be. It's a race between the Lynx, the Sun, or the Aces, as far as who the first match opponent is going to be for the Fever. So we'll see how that develops. And the Fever could still, they could still move up to 5th. Seattle hasn't really been that great as of late, but we'll see how that goes. But this was really just my post-game reaction to this game. It sucks that they lost. Hopefully they'll take some lessons from it, and and move forward. But that's it. Let me know what you thought about the game in the comments below. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.